Mr. Kazmi obviously has given a very thorough detail as far as the theme is concerned, and indeed the agenda of the Commonwealth Education Ministers Conference that will be held in Fiji in February. We, of course, are very much honoured to be hosting the first ever Commonwealth Education Ministers Conference in the Pacific. Last time it was held in the Pacific, or in this part of the world, was in Australia. Obviously, it's not an island state, it's a continental state, one may say. And so it's wonderful to have this. We've been obviously having a number of firsts for the first time. We've had co-chaired the Oceans Conference earlier this year in June with the Honourable Prime Minister. And then, of course, we are now going to assume the presidency of COP23 in about a week's time, again, which will be in Bonn. And then, for the first time, we'll be having the Commonwealth Education Ministers meeting. I was told by the Honourable Prime Minister when he landed in Munich, it was 1 degree. And apparently in Bonn, it's something like 7 or 8 degrees. When I walked into this room, I thought you were all preparing us for Bonn. I'm sure all of you. So I won't be very long. But ladies and gentlemen, the theme of the conference actually fits in very perfectly with what was held in June, and indeed was going to be held in a week's time, which is the COP23. And that is all about resilience and sustainability. It is very critical, in particular for small island states, and indeed for many other larger states. I mean, a lot of people think that it's only the Pacific Islands that are actually under threat. But if you read some of the recent literature on the predictions of what will happen if the current sea levels actually continue to rise in the manner which they are, and we don't arrest the problem, a country like Bangladesh will lose about 70.5% of its total land mass. So you can see what type of predicament that these countries actually will be in. It includes people being internally displaced. It includes a system that needs to be able to be responsive or respond to these type of global phenomena, and indeed specific country phenomena that can change the entire course of the history. We have Pacific Island countries obviously that can be submerged completely underwater. Fiji is one of the few countries, actually the first country that has come out and said that we will accept these people as refugees into our country to give them refugee status because they won't have anywhere else to go. We have already had 3 villages in Fiji that have been moved to higher grounds because of encroaching waters. Entire villages have been moved to higher ground. It means the schools have to be moved to higher ground. It means they need to find alternative forms of livelihood. We had another village just about a week ago, the Honourable Minister for Agriculture and also Disaster Management, whom again they relocated the village because of various landslides that are taking place in Tukuraki and Ba. These challenges, of course, are not just necessarily only infrastructure challenges and physical challenges that people face, but it's also about socio-economic issues. It also has an impact on education. It also means that we, through our education system, how can we actually make our economies also resilient? How can we inculcate a sense of people having that sensitivity and awareness about what climate change actually entails? So there's a huge number of issues that that's thrown up because of issues such as sustainability and resilience. We need to be obviously with globalization, and indeed it affects Commonwealth countries too, with movement of people throughout the world. How does it affect your ability to, or how should you educate your people? When economies grow, economies change, different demands for different resources, different technology, adaptation of different technology, it means also your curriculum needs to change also. So there's an enormous number of issues, of course, that will be discussed at this conference, and we look forward to collaboration with the Commonwealth Secretariat in this respect. And of course, they're very, very critical issues. I mean, SDG 4 is very, very critical for all of us, and as has been highlighted by Mr. Kazmi, that it's not a very simple issue. It involves a whole plethora of issues that need to be addressed and need to take into account. Of course, the conference itself will allows the space for not just state parties to participate, but also non-government actors, whether it's employee organizations, whether it's civil society groups, whether it's other types of NGOs that actually have an interest in this, of course, including teachers too. Today in Fiji, 69.4% of the entire population is below the age of 40. Now that in itself has enormous challenges and opportunities, of course, at the same time. So how do we harness the energy? How do we, through the education system, actually are able to tap into that energy, into that system, to be able to ensure that we have resilience within our own economies too. It's not just about physical resilience. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank, of course, the Commonwealth Secretariat, Mr. Kazmi and his team. We look forward to working with you. Of course, we'd like to meet up with you later on. I had the pleasure of meeting with him very shortly, very briefly yesterday. But we'd like to engage a lot more with you to see how best we can host you, what we can do to facilitate a very successful 20th Commonwealth Education Ministers Conference. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to seeing you in February. Naka, thanks.